But as far as the practice of Creole in St. Lucia is concerned, developments have been steadier and more sustained over the past 30 years. Well, you did ask for 50 years, but you look at me and you know I wouldn't know anything about anything that happened less than 50 years ago. So there I am. So I decided to make it 30 years. Prior to 1980, Creole use in St. Lucia was predominantly in the oral mode and very rarely used in formal situations. So what I decided to do for purposes of this presentation was to have a chronological review of significant initiatives in Creole language use from 1980 onwards. And I think these will speak more eloquently to the developments that have taken place. So, between 1980 and 1982, 2 regional workshops were organized by the Mouvement Creole Saint Lucie, in English, the St. Lucia Creole Movement, under the aegis of the Caribbean Research Center. It was called Caribbean Research Center, but it was St. Lucia conceived and St. Lucia based. The first workshop was on language and development, the St. Lucian context, and that was in 1981. And the second, the follow-up workshop, the development of Antillean Creole, and that was in 1982. Out of these 2 workshops, which brought together linguists and practitioners from St. Lucia, Dominica, the UWI, Haiti, and Martinique, and this morning you heard Dr. Dykhoff talk about persons like Professor Mervyn Aline, Pierre Venet, the late Pierre Venet, we should say, Martinique, well, you had people like Raphael Confiant, belonging to the Université Antilles-Guyane, and a group called the GEREC, the Groupe d'études de Créole, Groupe d'études et recherche en Créole. Out of these workshops emerged an orthography for the writing of Creole and the publication of a reference manual entitled A Guide to the Writing of Creole, which was put together by myself and another linguist, Paul Turmel-John. In 1983, the Mouvement Creole Saint Lucie, of which I was president at the time, and the Folk Research Center initiated the publication of a monthly bilingual newsletter. It was called Balata. Balata is well, it's the name we give to a particular kind of wood in St. Lucia that's supposed to be, you know, strong and resilient and long-lasting. We always choose names. Perhaps that's why we put the jinx on the newsletter. It was supposed to serve primarily as a research tool in support of lexical expansion and to help popularize the new writing system. I think it lasted all of 2 years, and then it, you know, sort of just fell into disuse. In 1984, St. Lucia becomes a member of the executive board of the Comité International des Études Créoles, the International Committee on Creole Studies, which at the time was headed by Professor Robert Chaudessin of the University in France, Aix-en-Provence. And at one of the committee's conferences, which was held in Lafayette, Louisiana in the United States, which most people perhaps won't even associate with Creole, but they did speak Creole, and I assume they still do, in Louisiana. That's where you get what's the name? The music? Zydeco, yes. The Cajun, you know, influence. There the decision was taken to observe October the 28th as International Creole Day. And the first observance in St. Lucia took place in 1984. In its earlier years, Journée Creole, as we call it, Creole Day, has grown. I mean, there was a lot of criticism and skepticism, you know, because some of us who are referred to as those super literates who just wanted to impose, you know, Creole on the rest of the populace. But now Julien Creole has become the most popular cultural event on the national calendar. In that same year, Professor Lawrence Carrington published his St. Lucian Creole, a descriptive analysis of its phonology and morphosyntax. In 1992, St. Lucian Jones Mondesi publishes a dictionary of St. Lucian Creole. His intention in compiling the dictionary was to provide a record of the state of the language to assist speakers in maintaining their competence in the face of what he called the erosive effects of English. He saw it as a necessary step in enhancing the status of the language and, by extension, that of its speakers, removing from them the stigma that they have borne for its use. The publication of the dictionary was supposed to facilitate the literate use of the language and open a path towards its formal use within the society, as well, and that was important there, as well as to support improvements in the teaching of English to those children who are primarily users of Creole. Then comes 1998, and at the request of the Prime Minister of the day, Dr. Kenny Anthony, the Governor General of St. Lucia, that's me there, introduces Creole in her presentation of the annual throne speech, which opens every session, every new session of the Parliament of St. Lucia. So this practice continues and has been very well received. So to date, I have delivered the throne speech for 12 years in Creole. Parts of it, that is. I mean, it's now a bilingual presentation with English and Creole. These sections, although the throne speech is then given in the form in which I present it to the media for publication. But when it appears on the newspaper, I look in vain for the Creole sections because they excise it, they take it out. The justification is that people won't be able to read it. I've made a fuss, but, what can you do? It's not recorded in Hansard's, although, I mean, I present it, everybody looks forward to hearing the sections and and they look forward to those words that they hadn't heard for a long time and so. But they're not recorded in the Hansards, or any debate in the House in Creole is not recorded in Hansards because the Parliament stenographers cannot write the Creole. I mean, I don't know that anybody has ever, suggested to them that perhaps they should, apart from me, perhaps they should learn to write it. But it's a step. At least it's there, if not in written form in the Hansards, it's there in the audio recorded form.